Hello, this is Ryan Mack, and your host of Main Street, the show that's bringing you real economic conditions and real solutions to the individuals and the people, and making sure that we want you to know that you can do and be the change you want to see in the world. We are here with Shri Thanedar. Thank you for joining the show today.
Ryan, thank you. Thanks for joining me.
And so, just to start off, you are running for governor of Michigan.
Yes.
And you've done a lot of great things, a lot of things with different businesses. But before we get into the questions about what you are planning to do for Michigan, let's talk a little bit about your background and exactly who you are and what you've done, and what exactly is your story?
Well, Ryan, I am an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the United States back in 1979. Became a proud U.S. citizen in 1988.
Okay.
So 30-some years now. And I am a scientist. When I came to United States, I came with a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry. And I came to pursue my PhD in chemistry at the University of Akron. I got my PhD in '82, and that's when University of Michigan offered me a job as a scientist.
Okay.
And so I'm an innovator. So I came to University of Michigan in '82 and was here till '84.
Okay.
So Michigan is very important to me because Michigan gave me many breaks. And the very first break Michigan gave me was when I got the job at the university.
Okay.
But also in '84, I got my green card. And the green card was the one that helped me get my citizenship eventually.
And so there's a lot of discussion about immigration. Immigration is a hot topic now. So
Yes.
This is obviously something that's very near and dear to you personally.
Absolutely. Look, we are a nation of immigrants, you know, and one of the reasons why America is successful as America is because how welcoming we have been to immigrants. Look at someone like me that able to come here, get the education, start many businesses. I started a number of businesses in America, created hundreds of jobs. You know,
and talk about the road, because your road is you've been a very successful entrepreneur.
Yes.
Talking about it because again, you were able to create a successful business. The recession was not kind to you.
Yes.
But you were able to rebuild from that. Talk about the lessons that you've learned from that. And because a lot of our audience out there, they like to hear about success stories and how they can actually do things that you've been able to do. Talking about the learning from your failures as well, and to make those turn into a success.
Well, look, I'm no Donald Trump. My dad didn't give me $14 million to start my business. I actually got a loan from a bank for $75,000. And I bought a little 3-person business. And that business had annual revenues of $150,000.
Okay.
Just a 3-person business. And when I bought the business, the owner retired, her secretary retired, so I just inherited one employee and about 900 square feet of a lab. It was a chemical testing analysis lab. And I had $3,000 on my credit card. So I used that money as a working capital. So it's a typical entrepreneurial story.
And I think one part that I don't want you to leave this part out, because you actually took a job before that for $15 an hour.
Yes.
In order to make sure that you learn the craft of the inside of a business. For anybody out there that wants to start their business, and you actually learn by working for $15 an hour, so you can learn on how to get the nuts and bolts of when you can actually become owner of that business.
That's right. So when I approached the owner to purchase this business, I realized that she solved very tough problems. You know, she was a service business. And when someone's having a product that's failing, so like Ford Motor Company, they're buying a paint, and that paint, suddenly one batch of paint is peeling and chipping, and they want to know what went wrong with this paint. And she would do the chemical testing, chemical analysis to solve the problem. So she solved huge, big problems, but she was a little company.
Okay.
And she didn't market it very well. You know, even though the science that she practiced was outstanding. And so what I did was I worked with her. So while I had a regular job, I would work with her on the weekend or evenings or during my lunchtime.
And so just to bring this point out, so what you were doing was you had a 9 to 5, so you can essentially work your 5 to 9, which is a business principle that many entrepreneurs, because you had to keep the bills on, you had to pay your bills, you had to pay you had to have living expenses, but you also had a dream that you wanted to do something to create this business, so you formed this partnership with her and learned about the business on the side.
That's right. I learned the technique because, see, I didn't come from a business background. I didn't come from a business family. You know, my father was had a small, clerical job in a court system. So I didn't really learn business as such. But I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be financially successful. And that was my American dream, to succeed. And I found this little company that I bought. And then I started working on it. So I was like employee number 2. And then I kept growing the business and expanding the service offering, adding more technology to my business, doing a lot of marketing, letting people know who I am and what kind of problems we solve. And very soon the business started growing. Revenue started growing. And in 1999, I got my first Entrepreneur of the Year award from Ernst & Young.
Okay.
And then by 2000, revenues have grown to about 4 million, and EBITDA of about 1.4 million.
Okay.
So very profitable business. And I've created 25 new jobs. So, and then the businesses just continued to keep going.
Because you also had an acquisition strategy as well. You had especially in making sure that you were able to act. So talk a little bit about that strategy as well for those businesses that want to have that. Because a lot of individuals they might be bootstrapping that. So you got beyond the start growth. And now you wanted to grow your organization. Then you're sustaining it now, or you have other business that you're helping to do that. But from the acquisition strategy, what caused you to go from that direction?
Well, there's 2 ways to grow a business, as you know. You can grow it organically, or you can grow through acquisition. So I try to do both. You know, so the chemical testing business, I largely grew it organically. Okay, so and that was called Chemir. And then the pharmaceutical business. In 2003, I realized that the pharmaceutical services business, where we were innovating new medicine as a service, so that business started growing rapidly. And so I split that into 2 different companies. The chemical testing business continued to grow organically, and the pharmaceutical business, I tried to grow through acquisitions. Now, what happened there was big pharma companies like Pfizer, they will not invest in a drug unless it has wide appeal and mass use, so that they can get their billions of dollars of profit.
Right.
But sometimes what happens is there are some rare cancers or some specific women's diseases that only affect a small group of people, maybe like 5,000 people across the United States. And then big pharma companies will not want to innovate because there is not enough profit in them. And there are small venture-funded, small startup companies that will take up that kind of a challenge.
And I actually used to trade biotechnology stocks for NASDAQ. So we did the whole phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Those, I'm very familiar with that.
Good. So when this drug development happens, the small companies would come to us with a concept or a molecule that they think will help cure a certain disease. And then we would provide them the service to take this molecule, make it, and take it to the marketplace for them. So do all the testing that is required by FDA, ensuring that the drug is safe for human being, that is effective. And so you do go through the trials and testing, and that's the service we offer to the small companies. And so these small companies loved us, and our business started growing rapidly. And suddenly this drug development became 80% of my entire business. And so now to do that, to provide a full service, one-stop shop service, I had to acquire many companies. A company that made the molecules, another company that tested those for certain properties, another company that,
And so you've got this expertise in chemistry. But where did the entrepreneurship come from? Were there other individuals that you added on your staff? There are many individuals out there who might want to say how to surround themselves with the right individuals. If there's something that you just happened to learn along the way, did you add people on the staff to make sure you can help with the right acquisition strategy? How did you take it to that step to make sure you can implement that strategy?
Well, before I bought the business, I got an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned some business skills. Being a scientist, when you learn and go to school to get a degree in science, often you don't get a good enough business background and business education.
Mm-hmm.
So I made sure that I learned about business practices, accounting, finance, and I got an MBA. So I prepared myself. Not only I prepared myself to learn about the business I was buying, but I also equipped myself with an MBA. And then one of my best skills are hiring good people. You know, I'm unafraid to hire bright, young, smart people. You know, I always hire people, I say, that are smarter than me. And so I put together a strong team always. Because I alone cannot make all of this thing happen. So I have to rely with good people. And then I train them. I educate them, I help them understand.
Was everybody from the science field that you were acquiring, that you were hiring? Was everybody, or was business acumen a specialty that you were looking for? Was it chemistry acumen, or a little bit of mixture of both?
A little bit of both. You know, marketing was important. Because you may have a great product or a great service, but if you don't tell the world that that's what you do, people aren't going to come to you.
And so they obviously you had to hire individuals who were able to communicate with those.
So you need marketing skills, you need scientific skills, because we were, you know, doing research and we were doing innovation and we were discovering things and we were solving problems. So we needed the best scientific minds. So we went out and hired good people. Then we acquired these little companies all across. I bought a company in New Jersey, in Colorado, in St. Louis, Missouri, one here in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and we did several in Florida. So we bought about 8 different businesses. And to do that, I borrowed money from the Bank of America. So I got a lot of debt.
And used the personal guarantee for that.
And use personal guarantee, because when you are a small business person, everything that you own, the bank owns.
Absolutely. And so talk about 2007 and 8, because that obviously was a challenging year. The recession hit. They couldn't have enough talking heads on CNN back then. I was on there maybe 5 or 6 days a week because everyone was talking about the economy, a whole lot more than they're talking about the economy now. But talk a little bit about that, because you went through some rough times and then you had to go and restructure some things. You went in and out of retirement. You had to get back into action. And talk a little bit about that time and all the things that you went through from a business perspective.
Well, 2007 was a great year for us. And revenues had grown to about $65 million. So that little company of $150,000 a year revenue, we have grown now to $65 million in revenue. You know, 450 employees.
From three.
11 million in EBITDA. So very profitable business. The business at one time was valued over $200 million. And everything was going well. Everything was going well. And then came the recession. You know, the economic downturn started happening. And our business was disproportionately affected by the recession. Now we know companies like GM and Ford and Chrysler had problems. Many companies have problems, but you know, the government gave them subsidiaries. Even Bank of America, the bank that gave me the loans, they got subsidiaries from the government because they were too big to fail.
Goldman, Morgan. I remember Lehman Brothers. I remember Bear Stearns. I remember Piper Jaffray and all those old school names before the recession that used to be like big time Wall Street names that are all gone. Merrill Lynch got sucked under by Bank of America. So all these things happened. It was a crazy year altogether.
It was a crazy year. And so what we have seen is that so as the recession started deepening, many of these small venture funded companies started going belly up. they just ran out of funding.
Right.
And we started losing our customer base faster than any other companies. And so at the time, I was the chairman of the company. I had a CEO for the pharmaceutical service business, and I had a president to run the chemical testing business. And when I realized things are becoming difficult, so I put myself as the CEO of the pharma service business in the middle of the recession.
Okay.
And I basically assured the bank that, look, we are going to turn this around. Just give us some time. There are a lot of lives involved, a lot of employees that we need to protect their jobs. And, just look at this as a long-term approach. And that once the economy recovers, we'll turn this company around and there will be value and I'll pay your money back. So that's what I tried to tell the bank. And the bank just, they were getting like 10 cents on a dollar on their other loans.
Wow. Okay.
Their loans were failing everywhere.
Yeah.
And I owed them $24 million. And they could see that there is value because the chemical testing business kept going.
Right.
Because it was a problem-solving business. So that business was not affected by recession.
So Khmer remained sustainable.
Khmer remained sustainable
Right.
even through the recession because that was a business that was not recession dependent. But the pharmaceutical innovation, all of the innovation stopped. People stopped putting money and investing into speculative or R&D,
Right.
in times when money was tight. And so these companies got affected. They started losing their investors. And so I tried to tell the bank that, give me time. And basically what happened was the bank saw that if they sell all my assets, they will get enough of the money that I owed them.
Right. So
And
that's obviously what they ended up doing.
That's what they ended up doing.
Wow. I mean, well, it was definitely a challenging time, but you came out of retirement
Yes.
and you started another business again. Talk a little bit about that. How did you get that going?
So my second Entrepreneur of the Year award was in 2007.
Okay.
So when the bank came and took over my business, they gave me a cardboard box and they said, if you feel free to take your personal stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So I go to my desk and I start putting my children's pictures in the box.
You can keep the pictures.
Yes.
Okay.
And as I was walking out of the lobby, I saw these two trophies, Entrepreneur of the Year awards that I'd won in the 2 years. So I asked them and they let me. So I put this Entrepreneur of the Year trophy in my box and I said, I'm going to win another one of these someday.
Okay.
And I walk out of the business for the last time and I come home and we learned that my home is going to be foreclosed in about 3 weeks. So my wife and I take our personal stuff. This was in St. Louis, Missouri. So we take our personal stuff, put it into a budget rental truck, and we start driving it, the truck, she and I.
So wait, so I don't want to let you get past that point. You're getting the bank is closing on your business.
Yes.
Your home is getting foreclosed,
Yes.
but yet you still had something that says I'm going to win another. What does that come from? Because again, there's many individuals out there who are entrepreneurs. They want to be entrepreneurs, and they don't go through. They see these trials and they see only what's in front of them. It seems as if the best entrepreneurs are able to see what other individuals are not able to see.
Yes.
And they see potential and they grab it. And so talk a little about that mindset that caused you to say, I'm still going to get another one of these awards.
Well, so basically what it is that I have had my share of adversities. I grew up poor in India.
Right.
I worked as a janitor. I struggled to get my education. So having learned and gone through I never came from privilege. So having gone through these adversities, what it did is it prepared me to the challenges. And so every time I face an adversity, a challenge, a downturn, I look at that as a opportunity to overcome that.
Right.
And so there's two ways. When life gives you a lemon, you know.
Right.
You can make a lemonade and
Exactly.
be successful, or
Right.
you can just put your head in the sand and say, and feel sorry for yourself, you know. And whenever I get into, difficulties, and whenever I have a downturn, I take that as a challenge. And my approach is that, how dare this happens to me, and I'm going to overcome it. And I take a lot of energy, positive energy, from the negative event that happened. And I fight, and I'm a fighter. And so my thing is that I am at my best when I am down, because I take that as a challenge and I fight.
I always like to say that being content and does not mean that I'm happy being broke. That means despite the fact that I'm broke, I can still smile because I know tomorrow and better, brighter days going to come because I can work hard to achieve it.
Exactly. And when you go through, and that ride going up is so exciting because you're solving a problem. When you look back, you can see where you came from. And it was not easy. And it was the challenge. You took the challenge, you worked hard, you never gave up, and you made it happen.
And so you eventually won another Entrepreneur of the Year award.
Yeah. So basically, we drove that budget rental truck. We came to Ann Arbor, Michigan in September of 2010. And then next day, actually, I found a little rental place that used to be a lab. And that lab had gone out of business in the recession, just like my lab. And so I rented that space. It came with a lab, chemical lab, and I restarted my business. So in December 1st, we opened the doors, and I was employee number 1. My son was employee number 2, and at the time I was 55 years old, and I haven't worked in a lab since 1996. So 14 years I haven't worked in the lab, and this was all new to me. And I'm back again vacuuming the floors and back again cleaning the lab, and I'm in the lab doing the chemical testing, which I hadn't done for 14 years. And teaching my son how to do things, and we're trying to revive and start this business. And again, adding more employees and again solving problems.
Let's not skip over that part, because adding more employees, I mean, you say it as if like you just add more employees, right? And so a little bit, because there are people out there wondering, how do you just do that? How do you just decide to start adding employees? And because obviously you have to get the capital from somewhere, you have to start raising money, you have to start making money. All these things have to come together to be able to even sustain being able to grow a business. Talk a little bit about that process, because eventually that company eventually end up getting you to become Entrepreneur of the Year award. What was about that process?
So again, it was very similar to my initial entrepreneurial venture, but this time I had experience. And one of the things that I noticed was that my business offering, service offering, was somewhat lopsided. I had a lot more pharmaceutical testing and a little bit of chemical testing. And when the pharmaceutical testing suffered in the recession, my entire business suffered. So the new business model, I made it in such a way that it became recession proof. So I had enough balanced portfolio of service offering so that if in the next recession, my business would survive.
Which is a good tip for any business. Make sure you have a diverse level of service offerings as well.
Exactly.
By learning from experience. And now you're running for governor.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Was it being upset with what was happening in the state? Did you feel that you can make a difference because of your background? What made that decision to say, hey, I want to be the next governor of Michigan?
Well, look, as a scientist, as a chemist, I couldn't bear to see what happened in Flint, Michigan. This government and the emergency manager made a decision not to spend $150,000 to use some chemicals to soften that water. And because they tried to save that little money, it caused the lead to leach into the drinking water, and it ended up poisoning. The state ended up poisoning thousands of children and adults, and that bothered me. a lack of
Bothered
science.
a lot of people. Yeah, it bothered me too. Yeah.
And it's just the way this governor came to Lansing saying he wants to run the state like a business. Now the state is not a business, and we're not looking at the bottom line here. We're looking at people's lives. And we have communities that need help. We have schools that are underfunded. And so the decisions that need to be made with compassion. It needs to be made with caring. And not everything can be looked at as a bottom line.
Right.
And so when I saw how science was ignored in Flint, and when I saw that there is not enough of a concern for the common person, but I saw that a governor and a government that's so beholden to big corporations, that I felt that I have achieved my American dream. My family is doing well. Both of my sons have graduated from Ross Business School.
Yep, go blue.
They are entrepreneurs on their own, creating jobs in America. So at this stage, I felt that the calling in my life is to go help others, achieve their American dream. And with that in mind, we sold the business 2 years ago. We took about $1.5 million out of the sales proceeds, and we gave it and distributed to all my 50 employees. So I had ended up creating about 50 good paying jobs in Ann Arbor, Michigan through my new business. And then we sold rest of it. We put about some money, several $1 million. I'm not Rick Snyder rich, or I'm not rich like Donald Trump, and I'm very passionate about it. So I took a big chunk of my retirement savings, the sales proceeds, my children's inheritance, basically, and I put it into this campaign. And I've taken a pledge not to accept a single penny from corporate special interest PACs. And so my focus is going to be more on people, and I want to kind of break this pay-for-play culture in Lansing. Right. Because our politicians get influenced by the dark money, they get influenced by the corporate money, the billionaires impacting and influencing our politicians with their money. And I want to go to Lansing not beholden to any of this, so that I can find good, solid solutions to our problems in education, in infrastructure. I want to fundamentally take a diametrically opposite view than what Rick Snyder has done and what the Republicans have done.
So do you mind getting into some of the issues a little bit?
Absolutely.
Because again, this, from an economic perspective, we always like to know, I always like to know, and Main Street watchers like to know, how do we plan on paying for these things? And again, so when you talk about healthcare, right now, we're from a national perspective, we have a healthcare system that's it seems like it's very volatile, to say the least. We got pre-existing conditions are on the table being removed. The mandate was just recently removed.
Yes.
The many of the exchanges set up under the Affordable Care Act are being, many of those insurance companies are being removed. They're leaving because of the volatility. So we're seeing premium price spikes going up across the country in various pockets of instability. So from the federal level, it's just it's havoc. So we're really looking to the states right now to figure out the best solutions to making sure that individuals get the best coverage. And so, what's your position on health care, and how do you feel about what health care should look like in the state of Michigan as governor?
Well, like education, I believe health care is not a privilege, but it is our fundamental human right. And many developed countries have provided universal health care to their citizens. And a nation like ours, with our affluence, we should be able to take care of our citizens' health care needs. Our seniors do not have to worry about either buying a prescription medicine or putting food on the table.
Right.
So it's only a compassionate thing to do. Now, we spend trillions of dollars on healthcare as a nation. Now, if you look at the insurance companies, often they take a big bite of our healthcare dollar.
Right.
Under a single-payer healthcare system, the insurance companies will not be able to take money out of our system. They will become obsolete, right? And so now we have a much more of a efficient system. We will be, as a single payer, we will be able to negotiate better prescription drug prices, because our prescription drug prices in the United States are the highest in the world. So we need to lower our prescription drug costs. And we can do that if we have the negotiating power as a single payer. So we can negotiate it better with the pharmaceutical companies. So we would avoid a lot of the administrative costs by putting it all together. And so a single payer healthcare will eventually not only cover more people under healthcare, but it will be a cheaper, less expensive system, if it's done right. And so I do support, Bernie Sanders has Medicare for all at the national level, and I think that's a good system to do.
And now, I mean, a lot of individuals within single payer, they talk about preventative care, because we have, I mean, the system that we had before Affordable Care Act was even implemented, which actually caused the slowest rise of healthcare premiums in the last 50 years. But that wasn't as far as what you're proposing. That system was a healthcare system that says that individuals are going to have to go to the emergency room in order to get their care because they just can't afford anything else. And there are actually individuals, when you hear certain things like individuals saying, you know what, let's even take away from individuals who can't afford any care. Let's just eliminate emergency care coverage. Individuals, when they don't have any health care coverage at all and they go to the emergency room, there was one congresswoman who said, hey, let's make sure we shouldn't even be paying for that. What does that make you feel like when it just seems as if a lot of individuals are saying, let's, because the for-profit system is a challenging system, and I'm a capitalist. I'm a proud capitalist. I always tell everybody that. But when you're talking about a for-profit system, when you're measuring that based upon individuals' lives, it becomes a little bit challenging. How does that sit with you as a businessman yourself, as a capitalist yourself?
Yeah.
How does that sit with you when you're seeing, and you're weighing that against caring, because the healthcare, the Medicare for all, does not necessarily seem as something that a typical businessman would propose.
Yes.
So how does that sit with you? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, my background is unique in that I have had financial successes, but at the same time I've lived a life of poverty when I was growing up. So when I worked as a janitor, look, I didn't get paid enough, and I didn't get paid benefits. So I see both sides of the equation. I see the people that are at the bottom of our economic ladder, and I see people on the top and who are successful. Now, we need to look at this whole thing with some compassion.
Okay.
We have income inequalities, right? We have income inequalities. The poor are getting poorer. Our minimum wage is what, $8, $9, and I met a woman, Tammy, in Bay City, and she was working for a manufacturing company. And that company went all automation. And Tammy lost her job. She's a single mom. She has 2 little children, and she's working at $8.50 at Taco Bell. And that's no life to live.
Right.
And so we need to have compassion. Sometimes the corporate greed has taken over, and I feel that this governor and the Republican lawmakers have been focused more on corporate profits and corporate bottom line. And if you remember, when Snyder first came as a governor, one of the first things he did was tax retirees' pensions. Which wasn't compassionate by any means. And then what he did was he ended up giving a $1.8 billion tax break to the corporations. Now, a lot of what Snyder did was more of a band-aid solutions. He gave tax incentive to big corporations for them to come in and set up a shop in Michigan. Now, they came in, they set up a shop, they collected the hundreds of millions of dollars of tax incentives. And later on, some of these jobs got outsourced. Some of these companies closed down. Some companies moved out of Michigan. But if you look at over the last 10, 12, 15 years, the net gain of jobs due to these tax incentives has been essentially zero.
Right, which is a lot of the trickle down have never really traditionally in the past worked. Where even just recently they came out with record amounts or increasing amounts of stock buybacks, where they're using the federal tax cut plan in order to do additional dividend purchases and stock buybacks. So individuals, the monies that are coming are not necessarily going to hire individuals and bring jobs back to here in Michigan or across the country, for that matter. So it sounds like you have a different take on that.
I absolutely do. Look, when you give tax breaks to the rich and when you give tax breaks to the corporations, where does the money go? The money goes to the shareholders, right? But when you raise the minimum wage from $9, say, to $15, that money comes right back into the economy.
Is that what you're proposing? Are you proposing
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm proposing that we raise the minimum wage to $15 and then we tie it to inflation so the families don't fall behind. You know, 20% of Michiganders live below poverty line. You know, when I was growing up, and I'm the only gubernatorial candidate that knows what it feels like going to bed hungry. You know, and my goal is to see that no child goes hungry in Michigan. You know, we need to have, so the corporate grid and capitalism has to be balanced with compassion. And we need to have a minimum living standard for the people of our state. And we can only do that by, say, raising the minimum wage to $15 or, you know, providing paid family leave or helping with universal child care and investing in early childhood education. One of the things that we have seen is that our schools are failing. Our schools used to be in the top 10. Now they are 37th in the nation. If you look at the reading skills for third graders or math skills for fourth graders, they are really at the bottom in the nation. And what this governor has done is has given money to corporations but has not invested in our education system. The governor has not invested in our infrastructure.
And what are your plans on, let's just say, infrastructure? Because I just bought a car, and I'll tell you this, one of the smartest things I've done was buying car tire insurance, making sure that you can get free repairs on your car, your tires, in case you run over a pothole or something. And I've used it 3 times in the past 2 years.
Absolutely. You know, Michiganders spend about $2.5 billion on car repairs a year. You know, this, you know, we need to use good material to fix our roads, and so that the repairs will last a little longer. And the Republican administration, the Republican lawmakers have been reluctant to invest in our state.
So from a federal level, it seems as if that's being held up. I mean, who knows when those funds are going to come. But we promised $1 trillion infrastructure plan from the presidential administration. Who knows when that's going to happen? So you're definitely saying that the states can actually make, and at least Michigan can make up the slack in terms of getting that back on. How much will that cost in terms of the cost in terms of overall investment in infrastructure, and what would that plan look like?
Well, you're looking at about $4 billion a year in terms of investment. We know we need to work on roads. Many of our bridges, 20% of our bridges are in bad repair. The new SULOC we need. You know, in terms of internet, many places in northern Michigan and Upper Peninsula don't have broadband internet. And how can you do innovation? How can the students study? And how can businesses prosper without high-speed internet? So these are kind of basic things that we need to do. Mass transportation is a huge issue. I know young people especially rely on mass transportation. And we're losing young people. This state is losing young people. Our population is flat or declining. And often many of the college graduates leave Michigan to achieve their American dream. And my point is that they should be able to stay here, and we should have a good enough a quality of life in terms of roads, in terms of mass transportation, in terms of auto insurance costs, in terms of incentives.
And let's talk about auto insurance a little bit, because again, auto insurance, the rates, especially in the city of Detroit, we've got many individuals are saying that the true population of Detroit will never really be known, because many individuals don't claim they live in Detroit out of fear that they don't want to pay those increased rates. What is your strategy for auto insurance?
Well, basically, my goal is that insurance companies cannot and should not use non-driving factors such as redlining, such as credit scores, marital status, education. None of these factors should be used in arriving at an insurance rate. We have a organization called MCCA in Lansing, and that organization need to be transparent. They by some account they have about $9 billion in their account, and yet they keep raising our insurance rates. We don't have parity. A person living in Bloomfield Hills, say for example, with 2 DUIs has the same auto insurance rate as a person living in Detroit with perfect driving record, which absolutely doesn't make any sense. So I will bring more fairness, and we need to solve this problem. And in my first 100 years, I want to get all of the experts together for 100 days. I want to take 100 years. 100 days. I want to take this issue, get all of the experts at the table, and hammer out a solution.
That's definitely a tricky one, because even from the perspective of non-driving factors, what insurance companies will say is, hey, well, if you're not allowing us to use this as an additional measures of risk, that's causing us to have to pay more money. So that'll cause us to want to charge more, because we're considering that as being more risky. And then there are different things on the table. I believe that Tom Leonard worked with Mayor Duggan to figure out if they can have a cafeteria-style approach. I actually was in favor of that. I believe that there should be some level of choice to say, well, you know what, maybe we might not have as much coverage for this, but for that we can choose our different levels of insurance. It seems like a very hard nut to crack.
It is. It is a very hard nut to crack, but we got to fix it. We call ourselves auto capital of the world, and we make two things. Auto insurance are very high, and secondly, our roads are undrivable. So we got to fix those, and those are two issues I would tackle in the first 100 days of my administration.
So let's talk about clean water.
The
Flint was a huge cause for you to. So what are some of the things that you want to put in place in order to make sure that you can ensure that ongoing we're going to have clean, drinkable water? There's many individuals who are drinking water in Detroit who are saying, hey, I'm concerned that our water in Detroit is not as clean as it should
absolutely be. So not only we need to replace the lead lines in Flint, but we need to replace lead lines in Detroit, in Bay City, Saginaw, all over. There's many other cities in Detroit that needs those lead pipes replaced. We need to ensure that we keep our Great Lakes clean and pure. Basically, I want to put the pure back into pure Michigan. And we do that by, for example, Enbridge Line 5, which is under the Straits of Mackinac. And we need to close that line down. It is a Canadian company that millions of gallons of crude oil goes through that, and if that line is about 60 years old, and if that line ever breaks, which I've seen pictures of it, and as a scientist I can see that the coating on the top of the line is gone bad, and it is like a ticking time bomb. And if that line ever breaks and the crude oil gets mixed up in the Great Lakes, that cleanup would cost somewhere between $6 and $7 billion, and we can't afford to have a disaster like that. And what I propose is that I'll work with the Attorney General to ensure that that line gets shut down immediately.
And so now again, that we're getting a lot of pricey things here. We're looking at so $67 billion in order to do that. You have infrastructure, healthcare costs. What's some of your plan in order to make sure all that? Because at the end of the day, you know, the federal government can say a lot of different things, and they can do a lot of deficit spending. The states don't have the luxury of deficit spending.
No.
They have to balance a budget or have a surplus every single year. So what are some of your strategies to make sure that we can have some money in the coffer and a lot of these things that you're saying get paid for?
Well, you know, we need to go to the federal government and get our share of federal dollars. Something like a new SULAC.
Okay.
Federal government should pay for it. Expansion of highway systems. Federal government should pay for that. We need to, you know, have I'm proposing a $30 billion, 30-year municipal bond, a statewide municipal bond that would pay for some of the infrastructure.
Right.
And as we, you know, invest in our infrastructure, it will create thousands of jobs, you know, and that will spur up our economy.
Right.
So the investment in infrastructure will, in the long run, will pay up dividends. Every dollar that we invest today will get $5 reward down the road.
Right.
But to do that, we need to have the leadership and the foresight to see what we've seen from Republicans is cut, and such austerity isn't going to take us to prosperity. You know, we need to have the openness and willingness to invest in our state, and only through the investment we are going to take the state to the next level. Investing in education and investing in you know, our roads and our health care. And I'm proposing that we also have a graduated tax structure.
Right.
So any family that makes, say, $50,000 or less will have zero state income tax.
Right.
You know, but families that make a higher amount of money, 200,000, 300,000 or more, will see some rise in their state income tax. I would also want to, you know, look at the corporation and see what tax they pay.
Right.
And I would want to raise that a little bit too.
And so now, and as a businessman, as someone who's formed multi-million-dollar businesses, talk a little bit about the graduate income tax, because many individuals have said that this is a disincentive to work or to achieve. Talk a little bit about that, and how, if I were to say to you right now, the graduate income tax makes it where I don't want to work harder because I'm going to get taxed more. Talk from the perspective of someone who's gone through many individuals who say that have not formed multi-million-dollar businesses. From that perspective, how would you respond to that criticism?
Well, look, businesses will rather have, and I ran small businesses, and I ran profitable businesses. I followed all the guidelines and regulations when I ran my businesses. And businesses will need the tax breaks help because that gives you a little extra cash.
Right.
But more important is to be able to hire a skilled workforce. I think the number one thing businesses need is a skilled workforce. That means we need to have an education system that's best and second to none. Infrastructure is important.
Right.
You know, a lot of goods get traveled on across the roads, and having a good quality of roads is essential for businesses to function.
Right.
So it's one thing or the other.
And I think because I think it's important to really just get this point in, because I mean, here you are, you're going through foreclosure.
Yeah.
You're in that rental car. You see this lab, right?
Yes.
And at that point in time, if there was if you'd had to pay more taxes, would you have said, I'm not going to start this business again because I got to pay more taxes?
Not really, because what is more important is that I get good employees.
Right.
You know, when I was growing, my business was growing in Michigan.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to find qualified people.
Right.
You know, because our graduates leave Michigan. So Michigan does not have sufficient skilled workforce.
Right.
Many of the graduates are not available. And so I would rather, as a business owner,
Right.
and I'd rather have good infrastructure, and I'd rather have a skilled labor force than get a few hundred or a few $1,000s from the government in tax incentives.
The point I'm getting at is that when you really wanted to start that business, that fire that you had inside of you, higher taxes, from my perspective, would not have stopped that.
That would not have stopped, but what was difficult was be able to get good people. Because mine being a service business, having good people, good skilled people, readily available was important. And for my employees, things like auto insurance is important. Mass transportation is important.
Getting back and forth to work.
Getting back and forth. Some young people that live in the city, they have to travel and take 2 different buses. And I know a person that walks, he takes 2 different buses and then walks a mile to get to his work. And so if we had a good mass transportation system, it will encourage more young people to stay and work.
And finally, one topic that's near and dear to me. I've done a lot of work with prisons across the country, and see the disparity of how individuals, especially people of color, how treated within the incarceration system. Do you have any strategy or a plan for criminal justice reform as it's implemented and done here in the state of Michigan, and what you would like to do, and how you'll treat those who are, whether it be convicted of nonviolent crimes or anything of that nature?
Oh, absolutely. I want to reform the prison system. We're spending way too much money on prisons. We have a culture of just locking people up. The length of prison sentences are much higher, much longer than you would see in other developing countries. And so we need to do that. There is also people of color and people of poverty are disproportionately get affected. A black person more likely to have a longer prison sentence than a Caucasian person, say, for example. And we have these discrepancies, and we need to have criminal justice, and that requires that we have more diversity in our police force, that we have more training to the police force, so that we have a fairer system. We need to, as far as I'm supporting marijuana, the recreational use of that, we have a ballot proposal right now. Once that proposal passes, we'll generate about $125 million that can be used for roads and infrastructure.
So is that a part of the overall revenue plan that you're proposing?
Absolutely. But more importantly, I will use my power as the governor to pardon those in the prison that are there for small possession charges, say, for example. I believe that we should have a strong deterrent, and the violent criminals need to stay in our prison system. They should not be let out.
So I don't want to go past that point. That's actually pretty huge, you're saying. So you're saying that those individuals who might have sold a few dimes of marijuana or whatnot, you'll be able to, if marijuana is legalized, you'll go back and pardon those in those sentences.
I would expunge their records. I would pardon them. And not only that, but I'll provide them the skill set they need to come back. The returning citizens should have the skill set they need so that they can get good paying jobs and become productive members of society. Our focus need to be, rehab and helping people succeed as opposed to locking people up.
Is there anything that's done, because many corporations use drug tests? Is there anything that you would encourage or talk to as a part of this marijuana strategy to make sure that individuals are able to get jobs, in order to pass that urine exam?
Well, we need to treat marijuana like we would treat alcohol. So there should be limits of what is acceptable and what's not. And let the science decide that. Based on science, we need to do that. But it's time for us to have a fairer criminal justice system, and we need to reform that. We need to spend less money on prisons, and we need to spend more money stopping a school to prison pipeline, for instance. We are expelling young kids, 13, 14-year-olds and throwing these kids into streets, and they get into bad company, and we ruin their future. And what I would like to see is more counseling, more career counseling, more mental health counseling in schools and high schools. And we need to help our young people. You know, a lot of times mental illness, the onset of it happens around the age of 12, 13, 14-year-old. And that is the time we need to provide them the skill set, provide them the counseling and the support that they need. And that means the teachers need to have support staff. Schools need to have sufficient counseling available so that our children stay in school and learn.
Are you an advocate? So let's education for a second. What's your position on education? Charter schools versus public schools. What's your position on either? Because that's a huge debate, especially in the Detroit area. It is a huge debate,
yeah. And I support the choice. Parents should have a choice where they want to send their children. But I want to get rid of the profit motivation in our education system.
Right.
So
we have a per pupil grant system right now.
Yeah, we do. And what I would like to see is elimination of for-profit charters. So basically, I want to have like a 2-year period where a for-profit charter schools converts itself into a non-profit entity. And so, because a lot of times when you have profit motivation comes in, whether it is in a prison privatization or whether it is our education privatization or charter schools, a lot of times then corporations tend to cut corners. They hire substandard teachers. They don't pay the same benefits to the teachers as their public school counterparts.
And it even seems as if the accountability is not equal between charter schools and public schools.
Exactly.
You have a board, but then you have the charter schools, and they might have had a board where they had a few of their friends get together and meet occasionally and have a very informal discussion just to say that they've qualified the mandate to have a board meeting. So I definitely think that. So you're saying 2 years, where you wanted to have a 2-year policy where they'll have 2 years to turn that for-profit into a non-profit. That's actually a pretty big policy proposal.
I would, and I think the DeVos's has done a disservice to our state. And what we have seen is the DeVos's has, grown. I think we have more for-profit charter schools than many other states. And, we need good schools. We need, most of our education dollars need to be used up to create a good education system, and it shouldn't be lining up pockets of people like Betsy DeVos or the corporations.
Right. Any closing thoughts or thing that you would like to tell folks about why you're running or about your business? I see you saw. I get my own copy of my book, The Blue Staircase.
Blue Suitcase.
The Blue Suitcase. I'm sorry, The Blue Suitcase. A Tragedy and Triumph in an Immigrant's Life. Definitely is a very intriguing title. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Give me a copy of that. Any thoughts that you want to leave folks with?
Well, I am not a career politician. I am running because I'm passionate about solving problems. I'm a problem solver, and a lot of what I say are not just talking points.
Right.
I've lived the life of poverty. I've grown, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I have grown businesses. So I bring a lifetime of experiences. I may not look like a governor that Michigan has elected in the history of Michigan, but I bring with some skill sets. I bring a different skill sets. I bring a different outlook to solving our problems, and I give Michiganders a choice between a career politician and as opposed to someone like me who have created jobs in public sector, who understands financial, who has financial savvy, I've learned the hard way through the recession. I'm battle tested, and Michigan is one of the states that suffer the most in a recession. And I think Michigan needs a strong leader at this time in our history, and Michigan needs someone, not just a career politician, but someone with the skill sets. And many of my competitors, if you look at it, all of our Democrats have similar issues. We have a lot more commonality or overlap of issues than differences. But if you look at the lives and how the life we have lived and who we are as a person and how we have dealt with issues in our life, there is a night and day difference.
Right.
You know, I did not come from privilege. I have the skill sets to take this state to the next level, and I offer my services and hope I get elected and be so privileged to be the next governor so I can make a real difference in people's quality of life.